consulting product manager for Exadata Manability in Enterprise Manager. And today we're going to talk a little about features available for managing and monitoring your Exadata environments. So just for the housekeeping, we have the safe harbor statement that this is the general product direction, and there might be changes in the future of the products. We're going to have some new features to talk about also. So first of all, when we're talking about Exadata Manability, we talk about a couple of different features. First of all, we have the Exadata monitoring. So that will help us to have a single pane of glass of all the components in the Exadata system. So it will help us to monitor and manage our Exadata storage cells and Exadata database targets and everything from one place. We have virtual machine provisioning, so you can provision your virtual Exadatas on the machines, and it will help you to set up all the components that's needed for your starting with databases on the Exadata. And of course, the Exadata management, that's also one of the most important features that we're talking about. So it's helping us to make sure that we can monitoring and manage some of the functionality in the Exadatas. We also going to talk a little about the Exadata migration and cloning capabilities in Enterprise Manager, and which features that we can use for that. And of course, lately we have all the ExaCS and ExaCC targets as well. So we're going to go through how we manage and monitor them as well. So let's start first. Why should you use Enterprise Manager to monitor and manage your Exadatas? So we have with Enterprise Manager the possibility to first of all discover and have a topology model of all our components that's part of the Exadata. And we can also do the monitoring and incidents. So all the monitoring capabilities are available for all the targets types in Enterprise Manager. And certainly if you have a third-part tool that's doing the incident and ticket managing, then we also have the possibility in some of those we can directly send tickets to those systems. Other we have connectors to do this. And of course, one of the major features is also the configuration and compliance management. So we have the ability to make sure that your system have all the components have the correct patches and all everything available on the system. And if you, for example, comparing your production and your test environment, then we have the possibility to do comparison and on the configuration as well. We also have a full framework for the compliance framework, so we can provide you with information about if your system is compliant to certain standards as well. So when you're monitoring your Exadatas and managing, then one of the most important features is to understand and know when you have some issues. And this is where we have the possibility to have dashboards that can provide you with information about server level management, compliance, and also if you have performance problems, then you can use those dashboards to identify those problems. We have in Enterprise Manager also full job system with automation, so you can actually deploy jobs and deployment procedures from your system. You can use the software library, so you can add new databases or new software to the system without doing this from any SSH console. And of course, some of the functionality may be difficult to run through Enterprise Manager, but we have the EMCLI as well, so you can do mass deployments in some cases. And of course, if you using Enterprise Manager, we also have the possibility to provide you with preferred credentials for the users. This means that a user who actually don't need to have a username and password, they can actually use the preferred credentials and run some of the monitoring management without really having full access to the system. So the first part here, we're talking about Exadata monitoring and the single pane of glass using Enterprise Manager. So when you have discovered your Exadata system in Enterprise Manager, we provide a complete picture of the Exadata. Actually, we have a photorealistic view of your Exadata where you can see all the components and exactly where they are positioned in the rack as well. And you can also see, for example, here we see that there is a red circle around some of them. And in those cases, there are some alerts on those uh, storage cells and servers that needs to be attended. So we have the full complete view of all the components, and this is exactly what it looks like in your system. And this is integrated with the Ops Center as well. So also, as we know, the Exadata have lots of databases. Some of them are different versions, and that means that we have lots of installations on the Exadata. So we have the ability to actually view those components. We can switch the view from this, and we can look at which version we have for all the databases, the cluster, the ASM, and other components in the Exadata. And the last part is the configuration view, where we see hardware configuration in the system. So when you manage your Exadata, one of the features is that an Exadata has flash cache, it has non-storage, but the storage cells, and we have the ability to have a look at all the components here, and we can actually see the performance. So we can look at the performance on flash and hard disk drives, and we can see the utilization, this disk group capacity, and this storage. We can also look at the IRM settings and see if there are any service time that's caused by the IRM settings. So for example, we're showing the top databases, which providing both hard drive and flash IOs on the system and the service time for those. And we can drill down. So for example, here we see the IO queue per disk on the flash. We can also see how much flash storage we have on the system and monitoring the flash usage on the system. And this can help us to identify all the problems that occurs on the system. So for example, why does my old TP just only consume 20% of the flash and not all the flash in the system? We can look at that and make sure that we have the system set up and configured correctly to use all the flash and all the capacities that we have on the system. We can also, as we see here, the distribution on the database, we can drill down on the database and we can look at both the most used databases, and then we see the databases with IORM weights. So IORM is IO Resource Manager weights, and this is caused by a setting in the database. And if we have this, then it is set to be managed in this way. So when we drill down on the flash, we can also see the average response time over time on the system, and both for hard drives and flash as well. And then we can look at all this information. And when we see some databases that we need to set higher quotas for, then we have the possibility to configure the IORM for either individual databases or for the default settings. So here in this case, we see that the performance QA database needs more resources, and then we can set it either to higher, or if we need less resources, then we can set it to lower to increase the resource utilization on other databases. And this will help us to identify, and we can then see the changes and what each database consuming on the system over time. So for other components, we also have the possibilities. We have the InfiniBand network management, where we can look at alerts, performance metrics, and we can do some configuration on change. So we make sure that we don't violate best practices. For other components that we don't have the manageability possibility, then we have well, at least information, so we can see about the InfiniBand switches, storage PDUs, and make sure that they are up and running. And if there are any type of incidents, then we will be able to find those incidents here, and we can also get alerting on those incidents for all the components. When some customers using virtual machines on the Exadatas, and then they need to provision and configure new virtual machines for the new clusters they creating. So we have processes in Enterprise Manager that helps you to create clusters, scale up clusters, scale down clusters, and delete clusters. So first of all, when we creating a cluster, then it includes database, uh, grid infrastructure, and ASM for that virtual machine. And then we have the possibility to scale down and actually removing a cluster as well. So as soon as you have finished with the cluster, then we can remove it. And here is the workflow for creating a cluster. You need to provide scan name for the cluster, scan ports to use. You need to have the ASM password. You need to create an initial database, and we provide disk groups where we create both storage, data, and recovery parts, and then we provide username and password for system. So with Exadata, we also have the Exadata Cloud targets. So that's Exadata Cloud at customer and Exadata Cloud services. And the difference between an on-prem Exadata system and a Exadata Cloud target is that we have a shared responsibility in managing and monitoring the infrastructure. So uh, Oracle is managing the DOM zeros, so that's the physical Exadata, and it's also the Exadata storage servers and the InfiniBand, the structure around that. The customers, they will have access to the DOM use, so that means they can create databases, but everything is configured for the cluster by themselves. And that gives in previous releases that gave us a problem because we could not see those targets as Exadata targets. They were only physical host targets, but now we have added the capability to see them as Exadata targets. So the way we have done it is we have created a first class EM cloud targets. So it's Exadata Cloud, and that will we will discover it in a special way, such as an Exadata. So it automatically identifies all the targets that's on the system and that's related to the cluster. We will also have the special functionality for the Exadata targets as well. Um, it's improving the possibility to see the Exadata storage service. So we will have the capabilities to do IRM and those features as well for the Exadata Cloud targets. And it helps us to provide the same KPIs that we have for Exadata. So you can monitor and you can set up alerts for the same KPIs as we have for an Exadata system. And we also have made it possible to do this script based, so you can discover an Exadata Cloud target as with EMCLI commands. And when you look at your enterprise manager and you have your Exadata Cloud targets and your normal Exadata on-prem targets, you will actually see them beside each other in the Exadata menu. So the first machine here that we see, that's a normal Exadata on-prem, and the second machine is a Exadata Cloud target. So we will be able to see ASM, and we will be able to see databases and all the features available. And when you drill into that Exadata, you will be able to see all the members and all the versions of those members on the system. You will actually be able to see the details on your DOM use. That's your um, normal machines, and then you will also see the grayed out here. That's the storage cells. You will not be able to manage and monitor and manage those, but you will be able to monitor them in the same way as you do. And you will have the same capabilities to drill down in the menus and look at and drill down to a certain ASM, a certain database, and go from the Exadata Cloud target to the databases. So next part we're going to talk about here, that's the Exadata migration and cloning capabilities. So when you're moving from your on-prem system and also from a non-Exadata system and to an Exadata system, it quite commonly involves moving several databases and consolidating those databases. So the most important information here is to know how to move and which databases that fits together. Will those databases have better performance on the system, and what is the risk, and what should you what should coexist on a system? So for that, we have different ways of strategies to move to your system. Uh, Other functionality that we have available is also the smart insight from Exadata Warehouse. So first of all, when you have if you already on Exadata and you see that your Exadata is growing and you know that soon you're going to be out of capacity, this is something that we can help you to identify. Certainly with the Exadata warehouse, where we using the historical information to make sure that we know about the usage from past, and by predicting and using algorithms to identify which machine that's going to be out of capacity and when it's going to be out of capacity as well. So this is where we have the Exadata warehouse to help us with that. And we will be able to look at historical data and forecasting data for different metrics such as CPU, storage, and memory on the system. So when you now know that either your old Exadata is going to be out of capacity or that you know that you're going to move other databases to your Exadata, then it's quite important to know which strategy to use. And of course, that could be different. Can we have co-allocated existing workloads together? Will they fit together, or will they be conflicting? For example, if I have two CPU bound applications, then my storage will not be used, and in the opposite, if I have two uh, storage based applications. And of course, we also need to know, can our system handle the peak workload? So when we consolidate, will there be peaks that actually max out the system or not? And of course, it's very important for us to know how fast we can do the migration. And we want to reduce the downtime. So that should be at least the minimum downtime during this. So for that, we have different strategies. And when we're talking about consolidating, we have several ways to do it. Shared service is one. So in that case, we have lots of small machines, virtual machines, where we have one database on each machine. This is quite complicated, and it will take quite lots of resources. You need to, every time you upgrade, you need to upgrade each of those virtual machines. We can also do dedicated DBs with shared servers on the shared server system, rack system, but in that case, we have dedicated databases. So every time we need to upgrade, we will have every database needs to be upgraded. So that's lots of databases to upgrade. Another way to do a consolidation is schema consolidation, but of course, uh, this is probably from the past, and we see that there is lots of conflicts. There will be objects that have conflicts with each other between the applications and so on. So that's where we're using the pluggable databases. And we have seen that this strategy is increasing the consolidation method in total. So to be able to do the consolidation, we have two features available. We have the migration planner and we have the migration workbench. So this is something that helps you to do the migration. First of all, the first part is the migration planner that will help you to size. So it's a type of sizing advisor that helps you to identify which system that you need to use for your applications. And then when you're moving the data, we have the migration workbench that will help you to do the moving and set up the new system with minimum downtime. So the migration planner here, it will help you to do comprehensive analysis of your system. So it will make the planning, and it will provide you with advices. And it's quite risk-free because you're just collecting the data from your databases, current databases. It will uh, identify the sizing of the system currently, and it will then take that into consideration when it's doing the calculation and mapping on your systems. And we supporting databases from 10.2. There are some restrictions because there are not all the IO metrics available, but it's more or less possible to do it from 10.2 databases and onwards. And we can do this to either Oracle Private Cloud, we can do it to Exadata, Exacloud system, and Oracle OCI shapes as well. And we have the ability to do this for database to database or database to server consolidation as well. So here we talking a little about what type of size and what type of shapes that we should try to migrate to. The planner will help us to say that, okay, if I want to move one database to one single database on the system, then I can do that. And I can also move databases and plug them into pluggable databases into the system. And I can get the complete information about this type of migration. So first of all, we do this in different stages. We starting with the planning. So we start to collect all the AWR statistic from the system, and then we use that for the calculation. Next step is, as we said, the migration part. That's where the migration workbench helps us to do the migration. And of course, you need to validate this. So we have two features available. So this is where real application testing can help you, both with SQL Performance Analyzer that will help you to analyze the SQL as a low impact solution. And then we can use database replay as well to do the concurrency testing and make sure that the system is going to handle the workload as it is. Uh, so when we do the calculation, when we collect the data, we have the ability to do different type of scenarios. So we can do scenarios all the way from ultra conservative. That means that we have peak maximum on all the applications. This is when we have peak for all the application, this is the maximum that we can fit into one system. And then we can take it to different levels, all the way to an aggressive level where we have all the average load on the system. So this means that if there is some peaks that aligns, then those peaks will actually may cause the system to be overloaded. And as we talked about earlier, we said that we have the database to database. This is a multi-tenant consolidation, or we have a database to server. This is one database to another database. And the consolidation is also providing us with advices about if there is any conflicts between databases and the workload characteristic, so such as we have high IO on all the databases, then that will be seen as a conflict, and that will make the databases not to work together. We will also be able to do provide information about storage platforms, so we can see how much impact IO is using for the flash cache and so on, just to make sure that if the system is handling the workload. We also not just having the Exadata, we also have the zero data loss recovery appliance management in Enterprise Manager that will help us to manage and take backups on the databases. So if we look at how the recovery appliance works, we have the possibility here. First of all, we take one full backup on the database. So that's day one when we onboarding the database to the system. Then from that day, we take virtual backups. So we only take changes from the databases and from all the changes that we have. So next days we add the new changes. This helps us to minimize the amount of backups and the amount of backup data that we need for the database. And we can do this on longer terms, so we have the possibility to restore the database for 30 days or what's needed for this. And we can do this from to cloud storage. We can use the recover appliance, and we can from the recover appliance we can also back out to tape. So this is the recover appliance, and the recover appliance helps us to, in Enterprise Manager we have the full monitoring capabilities and to handle all the databases that we have available. So we have an EM plugin for recover appliance that we applying, and then we are able to manage the databases. So that helps us to get full access to the recovery appliance and access to all the metrics on the recovery appliance. So we can see if there is enough storage available on the system, data rates, how much data that we actually copying from a certain database, so and then we have data received and sent. So that will provide us with information about the health of the zero data loss recovery appliance. We will be able to look at the data in a way like this. So we can see which database, how much data recover window for a certain databases. We can see when we have certain peaks on the system, so it's backups received, and we will see how much data that we flowing into the system during those time periods. And we can see if the database is unprotected. So the in the lower part here, we will see the bar, that says that we actually have a recovery window that's longer than what we really have decided for this database. So the needed is 4.5 GB for the moment, and we can use up to 100 GB. And therefore, we have the ability to have longer time window than expected. And we can actually see here if there is any conflicts and if there is any databases that will not receive the recover window for those databases. Another feature that we have available for uh, Exadata management is the possibility to do metering chargeback. So we have the possibility to help you to identify the usage of your databases. And if you have consolidated environments, then we can make sure that you're charging the right customer what they have actually used on the system. Uh, this is an out-of-the-box solution, and we using enterprise metering and chargeback in Enterprise Manager for this. And the way we do it is that we create charge plan. That's the first part of it. So we create a charge plan for a certain target type. That could be an database instance, or it could be an pluggable databases. Then we create the cost centers, and this is a hierarchical setup. So everything drills up to the top level, and then we can have different charge cost centers, and they can be sub centers of another cost center. And then we add the targets to the chargeback. So if we have a pluggable database, then we can add them as a pluggable database. It will show all the pluggable database inside the container database, and we can put different cost centers to each of those pluggable databases. And at the end, we assign the cost plan, the plans and cost, and then we have the cost center as well to those plans. So each target will have a cost center and a charge plan that will provide the correct charging for those. And we use those charge plans when we do the calculation, and then we uh, roll up all the costs to each cost center, and at the end, everything will be charged at the top level. And you can create charges for certain cost centers. You can send a bill to a certain cost center in this way. We will be able to, in this case, see the trending of each of our databases. So we can actually see where we have the peaks, and we can see if it's an increasing usage of the database, or if it's certain time periods where we have more usage in the system, and that will help us to do the resource planning on the system. And we have different reports capabilities. First of all, the chargeback administrator can do the reporting. It can also do publish reporting. And then we have self-service portal where we can show the usage trends from all the databases or single databases. And then we can create PDFs that we send to line of business users so they can see their usage of the system. So we're using Chargeback application, self-service portal, and BI Publisher in this case for those. And when you have all the data, it's not enough to do the trending analysis from this, we can also export this data to Excel. So you can drill down and you can create your own Excel sheets and see the usage of different type of charges. So it's CPU, disk, memory, and uptime for the databases that we can provide information about. So I know that we probably have had some questions in the Q&A, and let's see if there are some unanswered questions still, or if we have some questions that we should run here. At the moment, I can't see actually that we have any questions, but please, if you have any questions, let me know, and then we can have a Q&A.
Hey, Bjorn, while folks are actually coming up with questions, can you tell us if you have addressed all the flash issues? If what release should the customers use in order to get over the problem with the Adobe Flash, which is de-supported by Adobe, right?
Okay, yes. So Adobe Flash was de-supported the 1st of January, and to be able to have the full capabilities in Enterprise Manager, then it is important that you are on Enterprise Manager release 13.3 plugin release. That's or newer releases, and we actually recommend users to be on 13.4 because this is we have a better solution for managing bug fixes instead of new release every half year. Then we have monthly release updates in Enterprise Manager 13.4. So if you're not on 13.4, then we really recommend you to upgrade to 13.4.
So, as of now, we have what? Enterprise Manager 13.4 release 9, RU9, I guess, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So that should take care of all the the Adobe Flash technology that we were using before, and now we have completely cut over to the Jet technology.
Yes. Yes.
Bjorn, while we're waiting for further questions, I know that you can use Enterprise Manager from the Oracle Cloud Marketplace. Can you take advantage of these Exadata management tools from the Marketplace instantiation?
Yes, absolutely. So the Marketplace instantiation is a 13.4 release of Enterprise Manager. And therefore, we have all the capabilities that's available. So it's actually a pre-installed environment that we provide. It's all the way from a small environment where you have a sandbox where you can do the testing until you can set up a full production environment using our image as well. And therefore, we have all the functionality. You need to connect your targets to your enterprise manager in the same way. If you have cloud targets, of course, they will be easier to access. But if you also have on-premise targets, then you need to have a VPN or a fast internet, fast connection between your enterprise manager and your on-prem targets.
Okay, great. So would it make sense for people to take advantage of this marketplace image to actually get a first look at using your Exadata management tools here?
Absolutely. If you don't have done that before, you can absolutely do that. It helps you to be set up the environment fast and quick.
All right, great, thanks.
So Bjorn, there is a question on chargeback reporting in terms of licensing required. Can you answer that, or maybe Martin?
Okay, so for chargeback, we have there is licensing is this is part of the cloud management pack, and if you have cloud databases, so if you have XaCS, XaCC, then that will be included. On-prem customer needs to have cloud management pack for to be able to use the chargeback. For Exadata management by itself, there are no licensing.
I see. So also, we have had a bunch of customers ask me, like, I hear that EM 13.5 release is around the corner, probably in the first half of this year, I guess. And a lot of customers are asking, given that, they have to be on the latest releases for various reasons, should they go on to 13.4 or should they wait for 13.5? What would you recommend,
So the recommendation from my side is that we should start with 13.4 because then you are on the monthly release updates. As you said, 13.5 is around the corner, but you probably need some time to do the testing and validation. We are working on making the upgrade much smoother, and hopefully in the near future we will be able to have more or less minimum downtime between upgrades.
So what you're saying is 13.4 is already available. It's been deployed
Yes.
at lots of customer sites for the last 1 year. It has basically proved itself. So it's a very safe release, a stable release.
Absolutely, yes. Our main, I think most of the customers are on 13.4 when it comes to some of the larger customers. Certainly, one of the things with customers with Exadata is that we certify new releases of Exadata. For example, when we have the Exadata 20, the 20 software, it will not be certified on 13.3. It will only be certified on 13.4 and onwards.
Okay.
Bjorn, is it possible to do prospective cost estimates for the use of the database as a service?
Uh, could you uh,
Well, right now,
so
instead of just straight up chargeback, which is able to take all of the usage of the infrastructure, and we have maybe 64 different elements by which we can track, is there a way to do it forward looking? If an application owner is trying to assess the cost, they might know the memory and the database storage required in gigabytes, but is there something other than that that we might be able to use to be able to give a prospective look?
so in that case, you should use the migration planner. So, for example, if you are on-prem customer today, let's say that you have one database, it's large, it's using 20 procs of your current environment, but if you're moving that to an Exadata environment, it's may not be 20 procs. It may be 15 or 10 depending on the type of application. So in that case, this is something that the migration workbench can help you to find out the configuration of your new environment, how large your environment needs to be. So that's where we see the benefit of that.
Okay, thank you.
So there's another question from Kiki, I guess. The question was, what are the improvements in the upgrade process from 13.4 to 13.5? So maybe I'll try to answer this, and maybe Martin and Bjorn can also chime in. So as you know, we have actually changed the release process over the last few years, especially with EM, right? We are kind of very similar to the database. We have a yearly major release and a monthly release update, right? And one of the things that we have done with the current release itself, even including 13.4, is that in the monthly release updates, we not only have bug fixes and stability fixes, right? We also have basically been slowly introducing new features when it is appropriate, right? So over last year, you would have seen numerous features. For example, we did a lot of enhancement with the Jet pages for replacing the Adobe, and improved UI and so on. So our goal is basically to get new features to customers faster in a stable manner, and we'll keep that going forward. So before you would have to wait for a few years to get this big payload, and then you have to do the upgrade, right? But now you will be getting with the release updates itself. And then further along this process, we have also been working for a long time now to streamline the upgrade process and remove some of the pain. So we have a project called as near zero downtime upgrade. So we want to minimize the downtime that you would take, and streamline the whole, the OMS and the OMR, all this patching that you would have to do, so that it minimizes the window of time that you'll be down. So that is one of the key features in 13.5. So let's see if there's any more questions, or anybody has any other comments.
Hi, Bjorn, this is John. I had a question actually from a customer this morning. They're basically asking the monitoring and management capabilities. I mean, you've talked about a lot of capabilities here, especially around Exadata, but for non-Exadata, can these capabilities reach out to not only our cloud, but to third-party clouds?
So in general, yes, we monitoring in Enterprise Manager. We have the capability to monitoring a host, and you have the ability to see the CPU usage and the IO usage and everything on that host as well. So this functionality, when you discover a host, you will have those features for those hosts. You will not Exadata management is more more fine-grained. We have more information about the Exadata because it's our own hardware and everything. But for other hardware, it's more generic host managing and monitoring, and this is available for Oracle Cloud or third-party cloud as well.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add that while we would prefer, like of course, to use the Oracle stack and the Oracle databases, as there is some customer that they may use, but then the cost of the overall end-to-end deployment, right? If you're running on other vendors, it may be higher. The billing may be different, right? So that has to be kept in mind. And then, of course, if it is native to Oracle, like we will do more value add and more provide more bells and whistles.
Well, if there aren't any more questions coming in, I think we can probably end the session. Bjorn, thanks so much for the great presentation, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody.